This is John Cressman with monkeyuncle.com, and this is our vertical shooter tutorial for GameSalad. This is part 4, so if you haven't done the first 3 parts, I recommend going back and finding those and doing them. If you just want to start with this one, you can download the project file from our website, monkeyuncle.com. In this episode, we will be spawning enemies. Now, we've already created an enemy and we've placed them in our scene up here, and when we run it, he comes down and we can shoot him, and that's it, because the enemy doesn't do anything after he's destroyed. So normally in games you have a stream of enemies coming down. So what we're going to do is, that's called spawning an enemy, and we're going to create a spawner to spawn one of 2 enemies. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this enemy 1. We're going to call this one enemy 2, and just for fun and also so we can see that it's working. Nope, I'm sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing here. We're going to go over here to our space shooter graphics, and we chose an enemy. We're going to go with enemy red 1. So let's open up our enemy 2 and drag over red 1. We can basically leave everything else the same, although if you want, you can actually change things slightly. We'll make this one a little bit faster than the other one. And we're going to save this as vertical shooter 5. Alright. So now let's go back to home. We've got our enemy 1, our enemy 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an actor that will actually do all the spawning of the enemies. So we're going to call this one enemy spawner. Alright. And this is going to be above the screen so that it won't be visible at all. So we don't have to put in the normal code that we put in with the other objects that make them invisible. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an integer attribute, and we're going to call this random. Okay. Now, we're also going to create a real, actually we're going to create 2 of them, attributes, and we're going to call this spawn time, or spawn timer, and spawn interval. Okay. Spawn timer will keep track of when we should spawn the next one, and spawn interval will keep track, well, we're going to set a value of how quickly we want them to spawn. So we're going to set it for 2, that's 2 seconds. Alright. And now we're going to actually, again, let's save often. We're going to come in here, we're going to change an attribute. So when we first come in, what we're going to do is we're going to set our spawn timer equal to enemy spawner time plus our spawn interval. That should prevent it from spawning one immediately. So it'll give them, well, in this case, 2 seconds before they start spawning an enemy. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a rule. Alright, and this rule is going to say if our spawn timer is less than enemy spawner time, or self time. So basically, when this interval has elapsed, we're going to spawn an enemy. Now, to spawn an enemy, we have 2 enemies to choose from. Obviously, you could have 3, 4, 5, you could have 100. So what we're going to do is we're going to change an attribute, and we're going to use this random attribute, and we're going to assign it to floor, and that's just going to basically round the value that we get back from random. And now minimum and maximum, we're going to set that between 1 and 2. So it's either going to be a 1 or a 2. So when the timer's right, we come down here, we assign a value of 1 or 2 to this random. So now we have to create a new rule. We're going to put that up here. And we're going to say when that random number we just created is equal to 1, now we're going to do something. And what we're going to do is we're going to spawn an actor similar to spawning the lasers. We're going to spawn enemy 1. So when it's 1, we spawn enemy 1. Now we're going to set this relative to the scene. All right, the vertical position is going to be wherever we set this spawner, which will be above the screen, so that they'll come down from the top of the screen. So we're just going to go to position Y. All right, but we don't want them coming from the same place all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a random X. So again, we're going to use floor to do the rounding. And then we're going to come down and do random. Now this time though, we're going to create a number. We want to give it about 100 pixels on either side. So since the width is 320, we're going to choose 100. So that's 100 on the left. And the maximum is 320, so let's put 220. That's 100 on the left. So we should get a random number between 100 and 220, and we're going to spawn it at that point. All right. Now we have our rule. We're spawning. Let's duplicate that, and we're just going to change when the random number is 2, we're going to spawn enemy 2. Everything else can stay the same. So what happens is first time we set our timer. When the timer expires, we create a random number based on what that value is, 1 or 2. And again, you could have 10, 20, however many you want here. You don't have to use 1 or 2. You could generate a number between 1 and 100, and then say if less than 50, if greater than 50. If you have 3, give a 33% chance. But once you do this, you need to reset, because remember, the time has elapsed. So now we need to reset our spawn timer to the current time plus whatever our spawn interval is, and make it really easy to change because it's an actor attribute. Okay, so now we're going to give that a test. I'm going to go ahead and hit home. There's our spawner. Oh, we're going to click on scenes. We're going to do our play. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this actor, there it is, enemy 1, and we're going to delete it. And now we're just going to drag our enemy spawner up to the top here. In fact, we're going to put it a little bit higher. Now again, we're going to file and save and hit preview. Oh, there comes the red one, so that's enemy 2. And there comes enemy 1. Oh, there's enemy 2 again. Enemy 2. Enemy 2. Enemy 1. Notice how it's slower. See how number 2 catches up? Up, and it ran into me, and the game is over. So that is our spawning behavior. We now have enemies that will spawn and pretty much a continuous loop until we die. So in our next episode, we're going to be adding some enemy behavior. We're going to take enemy 2 and we're going to give him the ability to fire at us. So not only are we going to have to dodge enemies, we're going to have to dodge enemy laser blasts. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please check us out on monkeyuncle.com, and we look forward to seeing you next time.